Hi. Welcome back. We hope all has been well. At Berg Mountain Optional University in #Estoiles of Liberty, Anglo-American literature. In this session we cover 6th Scottish Common-Sense Realism. Won't you come along with us?
5th Estoile of Liberty v. Scottish Common-Sense Realism. Thomas Reid, May 7, 1710 to October 7, 1796. The birth of Angelo-American literature, perhaps, began in the highlands far from enforced jurisdiction, outside walls in the wilderness where freedom of thought could be appreciated. Similarities in Rome's domination of Britain were made with England's contested hegemony in Scotland as would England the colonies and America's north over the south. Revolution is not only natural but ought be expected considering man's relationship with liberty, which is always fleeting from the present, fueling desire in man to desire more. We, somewhere in the catacombs of time and space, plant stakes marking off from the rest of the world what we think is ours. The first stake claimed is our sanity to know morality in what's right from wrong, where of what's right we clearly ethically label things good or bad. As some things considered right at the time, like slavery, or wrong as in the Boston Tea Party revolution, festers in minds of those who think themselves right and good, after which revolution is sparked. Like uncontrollable laughter, inequality is ridiculous when exaggerated, but individual thought is usually hushed as audiences accept reality, returning home to attend matters of estates. As a man's home is his castle, lords of their estates men accept the reality of inequality for the benefit afforded morality until violence unquelled affects matters at their estates. The movement labeled Scottish Common-Sense Realism was democratically governed by presbyters, where tanistry afforded those in Scotland a leader and a man opposed to the Borg, where men are mere numbers void of purpose or an identity other than to serve the king. Freedom of speech is nothing without that of thought, where Thomas Reid and others rebutted skepticism and its paradoxes. Without sense there's no theory of perception.
Freedom of speech is nothing without that of thought, which was treasonous as bees in hives only, if they thought, would be of service to their queen bees in hives, where while in the wilderness Scots were deserters since Aethelstan. Conquering York, the then only remaining Viking kingdom, he would be the first ruler of the Anglo-Saxons as King of England, where invading Scotland he would force Constantine II's submission there inside. Displeased at his rule, Scots and Vikings would invade England only to be defeated in the Battle of Brunanburh, where he became ruler on both British Isles, with Scots retreating to the highlands wildernesses. Why? Well, because after losing a battle men also lost their lands and possessions, which soldiers term booty. Those Scots who survived the war could no longer live indoors in Scotland, as like citizens harboring fugitives from justice were seen as rebels too. Scottish women, elderly and children may have been welcome under roofs, but not so men able-bodied. The Norman king of the Anglo-Saxons from 924 and English king from 927 until his death in 939, Aethelstan left no heir, and the nature of tanistry as an only means of maintaining order. His successor, Edmund I, was his half-brother. Fleeing civilization to the wilderness, while maintaining a Scottish zeitgeist, their right to practice Freemasonry was established, and they began to build internally under tanistry and externally through architecture. Roman administration, like Russian in the Ukraine, directed architects, raw materials, and craftsmen to sites in Scotland strategically beneficial to Roman hegemony. Aethelstan replaced Roman administration with English, who in closer proximity may have been more effective to the Scottish infrastructure, but occupied by Englishmen or those loyal, there still remained a large portion of the male Scottish population living outside under the sun, moon, and stars. Men outside walls are barbarian as sensus communis erects buildings, unifying men in crafts under the Rose Croix. Then, crews began in times of peace construction.
Thomas Reid's sense of realism was within Masonic audiences appreciated secretly, but others would follow, attacking skepticism and the philosophical paradox. Opposing Hume, Reid wrote an inquiry into the human mind in 1764, essays on the intellectual powers of man in 1785, and in 1788 essays on the active powers of the human mind. Scottish rebels after Aethelstan were morally wrong and ethically bad, to English, of course. The paradox left no hope for redemption after defeat, where escaping justice in the highlands, England wouldn't afford their posterity to prosper as graciously as sons whose fathers won the war. English subjects, naturally seeing Donaldson written on paper, would select it before the Scottish MacDonald or the Irish O'Donnell. Yes, it is discrimination, but that was then, though it's still today. Finding purpose in ordo of Chel, order from chaos. Fighting off the wilderness, there is always a Solomon somewhere and a Hiram not far off, where most people philologically are born to fill roles and assigned names accordingly. Being right and good is to subject subjective, where Scottish, Scotorum, derived from Latin, while Scots call themselves Albanese.
Without our senses there is no theory of perception, so what the king was, whether mighty or meek, was measured by proximity to tanistry. Man fights his nature submitting to others in society amicable to their causes, but when one finds oneself outside the king's favor, fleeing post-haste might be better than leisurely walking away. Leaving one for another will never last, because outside, if only for an instant, one may think, and in thinking take liberty to improve the world they control. The problem comes when the king says he owns everything you can or ever have seen, where from his logic he's right and good, where the wilderness is surrounded by the perimeter of society, where writing the names of rebels born under any jurisdiction binds that person to the land, at that time, in our conditions, because you would have wanted them to, and the only way to approach sovereignty is through subjects. The king claims everything within his boundaries, even squirrels and acorns, but squirrels and acorns unknown might remain so, as Albanese would prefer. Perceiving Scots are only those under Roman rule.
Freedom of speech is an after effect to the First Amendment, where there must be freedom of thought first. No, subjects can't think what they want, but secretly ideas may be advanced through the dialectic. Secrecy is the lock to doors of buildings, not of man's hands opened by words.
That concludes the information we have you this time. Next session we cover native moral enlightenment theory in the fifth Estoile of liberty. We hope to see you there. Thanks for your time and consideration.